Can you hear me, Nathan? Oh, no, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's on my end. Let me try switching. How about now? Say something, man. Oh, I think it's me. Maybe. Welcome, everyone. We are officially live.
Check test 1 2.
Oh, there we go. What's up?
Check test 1 2. There we go.
Yeah. How are we doing?
All right.
All right.
Switch page caused me to have a little weirdness.
No worries. No worries. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. We are going to go ahead and get started here. You can tell we are live. We are doing these live and making sure everything's engaging. So be sure to drop questions in the chat, comments in the chat as we go. I'll drop a little fun one in the chat right now. How long is everyone taking off over the holidays? I'll start. Don't tell my boss, but I'm going to take about a week and a half. If my boss is here, well, then hopefully he's cool with that. So drop in the chat how long you're taking off over the holidays, and we'll get started here. My name is Joseph Beringhouse. I want to welcome everyone to our session 4 proactive steps to secure access in the cloud. I am not the host here, but I will be the Q&A panelist. Our presenter today is Nathan Schmidt, our cloud security architect here at Sunry Security. Again, you'll notice there's a chat panel on the right side. Go ahead and drop questions in chats throughout the session. We'll make sure either that I get to come back in and interrupt Nathan, or we'll save until the end, depending on the question. If you do have a question about the recording, I promise you we are recording the session. We will share it with you after as well, so you can watch it again, share it with a colleague, and we will make sure that we get that in your hands as well. With that, Nathan, I'll turn it over to you. Take it away, man.
Thank you, Joseph. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you may be logging in from. My name is Nathan Schmidt. I am a principal solution architect here at Sonry. And so I want to talk a little bit about our capabilities and what we're able to do and the 4 steps that you can do to take care of the really gnarly things that can really affect your public cloud. We'll dig into that today. One of the things that really stands out here is that 75% of the security failures in the cloud will result from inadequate management of identities, access, and privileges. When we talk about the public cloud and who and what gets access to it, one of the big focuses that I think a lot of the cybersecurity marketplace focuses on is around vulnerabilities. But it's actually, again, this will be in my personal professional opinion, that vulnerabilities are a secondary problem in the public cloud. The primary problem in the public cloud is if somebody either directly through valid credential attack or getting access to something like an EC2 instance that's privileged to do so, if you can snapshot an EC2 instance, mount the snapshot and exfiltrate the data without ever touching the OS, that becomes the primary problem of the public cloud. That's what we've been seeing as it relates to cybersecurity with the public cloud. Attackers are going to get in. And so being able to secure those identities and stop the attacks is in your control. And you can do that with Sonry. And so when we talk about prioritizing access and permissions inside of the public cloud, what we're trying to do is to break that attack chain. Vulnerabilities are still a crucial and important part of public cloud security, but it isn't the only piece of that puzzle. So when we look across who's been attacked recently, like Onus had a vulnerability in a lateral movement issue that related in ransomware. Centec had some unknown admin related to a compromised credential. Again, a valid credential attack. Those are real things. Social engineering, giving access to being able to gain excessive permissions inside of the cloud. All of these, we've seen them. And where the problem starts is that if you only have a CSPM, even if that CSPM claims to have CNAP, if you're not looking at the components of unused identities, excessive permissions, lateral movement, unknown admin, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to prioritize how people can gain access to your public cloud and potentially, you know, gain access, take it over. If somebody can get to global admin, it's game over. You've got very short period of time. If you're waiting for your monitoring to go off to tell you that somebody has logged in and is accessing critical identities in your cloud, it's too late. So how can you get control of this? How can you start to really um, get your arms wrapped around this? And it starts with eliminating unknown admins. So what we mean by that is it surprises a lot of our customers when they first get in and try out Sonry and really get in there and start looking around how many cloud admins, organizational admins, account admins, project admins, the permissions that provide admin level credentials inside the cloud. That can come from a multitude of places. We'll talk about that today. Being able to remove unused identities. A lot of people are very interested in stale identities. And when I say the word identity, I don't want to trigger MFA and conversations about IGA and IDP. That's not what we're talking about here today. When we talk about identities, we're talking about people or things that have the ability to get permissions inside your cloud to make changes. And if those are sitting around unused for 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days, a year, those are just sitting there ripe to be taken advantage of. And a lot of times those come from third parties where somebody has been brought in, given temporary access to something, or they thought it was going to be temporary, and then those ended up used against them later on. People talk a lot about least privilege. It's certainly a goal, but getting to the point where you're able to actually reduce the permissions that people have, it's an important part. I have a really great analogy here involving cars and rearview mirror. I'll probably bring up a little bit later. We'll talk about that in more depth. But the last step is disrupting attack paths. And so if we think about permission inheritance and escalation capabilities, understanding where those are in your cloud isn't just waiting for your logs to tell you when that happens. You have to understand these permutations of risk before they can be taken advantage of. So, the order matters here. And the reason why we're suggesting these 4 steps in this order is eliminating unknown admins in your cloud. It's actually kind of hard to detect. Sure, you know where some of your break glass accounts and your admin accounts are, but understanding where those are, but it's super easy to fix. And this is where Sonry comes in, and we'll talk about that. Unused identities. This is what a lot of the marketplace, when they talk about cloud infrastructure entitlements management, or CIM, in the public cloud, this will be one of the first things they bring up is we're going to find all your stale identities. It's easy to detect and it's easy to fix. And it's an important part of this step because once you take care of those 2 things, now when you start going out and looking at the number of identities that you actually have to manage the permissions on and get to a place of least privilege, it can be easy to implement and maintain. But it's going to be a lot easier if you can remove some of the extraneous stuff that's just been sitting around there unused for a while. And then when we get to the disrupting the attack paths, this is actually really hard to detect. This is the secret sauce of Sonry. And it can actually be hard to maintain. But being able to understand where these things are and truly getting control of what's going on in your public cloud, taking these steps in this process is going to be a significant combo to be able to make sure that your cloud is in a position where these people or the things that have the ability to make changes in your cloud are limited and the surface area of that attack significantly shrinks. As always, as I'm going through this, if at any point you have any thoughts or questions, don't hesitate to bring those up in the panel. I may not see them initially because I'm talking and I talk with my hands and I'm doing a lot of things, but we'll have folks jump in and interrupt if those come in. So please don't hesitate. And if you have any thoughts on this, or you think, why that order or why that particular way of thinking, challenge me. Let's talk about it. So as we start coming in and we kind of break these 4 steps down, finding and securing unknown admins, what does that even mean? Well, when we think about, like I said, you probably know of admins that are in your account, but how are they getting there? If they're just being presented with admin privileges in AWS, or they're part of an administrative group inside of Azure AD, or you've set up a group that has these administrative privileges, it's going to be very clear from that perspective who is admins. But if they're getting those through inherited permissions, if they're getting that through trust relationships across accounts in AWS, if they're getting that through nested groups in Azure AD, how do you know? Logging in through the Azure portal and seeing nested groups is not something that's easily done. It is the bane of existence for a lot of people that have to deal with that. So being able to see who has the ability to escalate, self-escalate, or indirectly escalate into a position that gives them administrative rights, is finding and securing unknown admins. I was focused on the wrong screen. And I talk a little bit about that here. And so when we think about break glass accounts, when we think about non-human admin levels, and that's like roles, right? These are things like service principals, like service users. They're going to have the ability these are the things that can do things in your cloud. These are nouns, right? People or things. But being able to understand those relationships across accounts, across groups. IGAs are very good at being able to define who should do what inside of a public cloud, but they're very poor at being able to determine what is set up inside of a public cloud. So being able to determine who is the administrator, you can use Sonri to help you evaluate what should be set up by understanding what is. And that's one of the key capabilities. So many of Sonri's customers, that's what they're doing. And so being able to find these unknown admins and be able to understand those relationships across accounts gives you incredible visibility in how to take that first step in reducing these admin privileges that could be sitting around waiting for somebody to stumble across. There's are inventions even people making stuff up? No, it's a lot of times it's just discovery of things. Well, when bad guys get into your cloud and they get access to a valid credential and log in, what are they looking for? They're trying to discover how to get to those permissions that enable them to do more, right? So also getting to the point where we can remove unused identities. This becomes an incredibly important component because unused identities become. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. It's a very simple concept in that if there are identities laying around that people have forgotten about or aren't using, those can become easy targets to take advantage of, log into, and start doing things in your cloud. And removing an unused identity can break down attack paths in many ways. I see you've jumped in, Joseph.
I'm here. There's a good question that I think lines up really well with the process you're going through. So I wanted to have you ask it, and then I know you're going to keep walking through it. But
Yep.
We just got a question that said, why is it recommended to address the risk and order of unknown admins, unused identities, overprivilege, and lateral movement? Why do you address it in that order?
So the big reason that you do that is because when you do it in that order, when you take away admin privileges light up because they have so many capabilities. So if you take those things out and you take those things away, when you take out the unused identities, you're reducing the things that are sitting around. It's like before you get to the point where you can vacuum your carpet in your house, you have to pick up the things that might be laying on top that people aren't using. They need to be put in their appropriate places. It's the same sort of analogy. As you're cleaning up your cloud environment, you need to start with where the clutter is. And if you have a bunch of admins that aren't even supposed to be there, and you have a bunch of identities that may have sensitive, maybe not full admin privileges, but maybe some sensitive privileges, you want to start taking those away. And so as you start getting to the point where you are looking at lateral movement and who has the ability to take lateral movement, you've reduced that clutter. And now you can focus in on the things that are challenging to see. And that is what we're doing with Sonri. And I hope that answered your question. I'm getting a thumbs up, so I think we're good to go there. But as we when we think about finding and removing unused identities, removing one unused identity again can break down a bunch of different attack paths. And so being able to see that a in this case an AWS role has been unused, it's a great way to be able to just take that out of the equation. And in this entire piece over here that is going from sandbox through stage over to production, that goes away. If you take care of that role that nobody's using, it goes away. And I think one of the big challenges that happens in a lot of organizations when they start talking about that is how do I know that just because it's unused, maybe it's unused for just a short period of time? Well, most tools only give you 30 or 60, maybe 90 days. You can customize that in Sunray, number one, so you can be confident that after a period of time that you expect in your organization, that you can take those away. That's one way you can do it. The other part of that is getting to a position where you can actually make sure that you know who's responsible. Sunray makes it easier for you to know who's responsible for what inside of your cloud, because you're helping define that as you're bringing those accounts in. It's really easy to get started. It's really easy to start defining where those things need to go and who needs to take care of it. And so getting to a point where you're able to remove those unknown admins and unused identities is a great way to really help bring your organization together and become cohesive and bring that horizontal stripe across those teams, those verticals that are managing cybersecurity in your organization, to be more in line together on how to secure your cloud, because you're going to have to work together to be able to do that. So the next step, getting to least privilege. Look, a lot of tools out there will be able to show you what you have set up today and what permissions have actually been used. And so to take away the ones that are unused. A lot of them are doing that. But if you don't have the ability to understand, like in AWS, if you don't understand how that relates to SCPs, to service control policies inside the cloud, or management groups inside of Azure, or relating to delegated permissions inside of Azure AD, if you don't understand how all those relationships work and how one star can create a situation where it's just opening up a huge number of permissions for the person or the thing that you're looking at inside the cloud, you need something like Sonri to really help you make those determinations and get a deeper understanding of what these things, people and things can do inside of your cloud. So being able to, being able to lock that down and not just be in a position where you're looking at only what this identity has the capability of doing, being able to see from the perspective of like secrets manager. I'll actually show this to you in the platform today of how we're able to get from a star permission to break that down based upon what you're using. That's an incredibly important part of least privilege. And we're taking the full effective permission scope in I don't know why I lost my vocabulary word, but we're doing that to fully understand what's going on inside of your cloud. And then when we get to being able to understand high risk identity attacks and how lateral movement can happen in your cloud, once again, once you've taken apart and remove that clutter from your cloud environment, being able to understand where these last pieces of the puzzle are to help you prioritize maybe indirect permissions that are showing up, where there might be some confused deputy situations, where some separation of duty challenges that are happening inside of your organization. Sonri can help you find what those are, what they look like, and being able to do that across accounts in AWS and be able to understand that across groups inside of Azure. So being able to see these inherited permissions, these toxic combinations of permissions that can grant a person or a thing the ability to do things like unintended access to key vaults, or in an unintended access to sensitive data inside of your cloud. We can see those and break those apart so that you can make sure that only the right people and the right things are getting access to what's most critical inside of your cloud. All right, I want you to keep those questions coming. I really do appreciate seeing those. I'm going to move over here and show you an example of what this looks like inside Sonri, right? So we talked a lot about those 4 steps, starting with unknown administrators inside of your account, going to unused identities, looking at least privilege, and then seeing the lateral movement. I'm going to walk you through that process. But this is what Sonri looks like when we first come in and we start really analyzing what's going on with your identity. We require no egregious permissions. It's easy to set up, very simple read-only permissions to be able to see the metadata coming from your cloud. We're never going to consume actual data from your cloud. So we're only going to see the information that relates to how these identities access each other and things inside of your cloud. And we're going to break that down. We're going to pull that right now. We have a risk index that shows there's a pretty significant situation going on here from identities. We can connect that 24 to 48 hours, be able to see what's going on from an identity perspective inside of your cloud. And we can come into our identity inventory and really start taking a look at, it's not just people, but also things that have the ability to do things in the cloud, groups that provide inherited permissions inside of your cloud. We can see that through our inventory. I bumped a button on my mouse. I apologize for that. We are live after all. And so we can come in here and we can say, you know what? I want to see all of the admins. And here's this joker, Nathan Schmidt. I'm using my own name as an example of how we can do this. But if we were to come in and look and see, okay, Nathan is an admin in the cloud. Why is he there? We can use Sonri to evaluate what's going on and how this identity has the permissions to be able to do administrative things inside the cloud. And we can also use this as a certification. So if you know Nathan is supposed to be in there and is an administrator in your account, you can actually use this. You can use Sonri to certify this. You can either certify that permanently and say, I'm going to accept the risks associated with this particular identity, or you can do it for a time period. A lot of organizations, their teams are on audit basis or a timeline, so you can snooze this for 30, 60, 90 days, however long you need, 6 months. You can snooze it for a period of time and be able to come back to it, say, I want to reevaluate this after a certain period of time to certify it. But if we want to certify that permanently, you can do that, click it, accept the risk, it goes away. And now we still have 49 users here that we need to understand more about what's going on. So if we come in, we talked about managing administrative rights inside of your cloud. Now, if we take a look at unused stale identities in your cloud, we can come in and we can take a look at Jeff. And Jeff has an unused identity. And if we take a look at this, we can actually see more information about what's going on. He's been inactive for 30 days. So you can actually take action on this. We provide really great instructions on how to use CLI or console. You also have the ability, if you want to, you can permission Sonnery to actually take action inside your cloud to help you automate these things. So you can do things like use push button automation to delete a user inside of your cloud if you want. But if you want to automate that, additionally, beyond having somebody come in and do that piecemeal, you can also set up what are called escalations. These are playbooks that you can use that easily enable you to be able to remove users. You can do that automatically inside Sonnery. You can do it based upon a particular application, a particular team, or you can do this across the entire landscape. You can do it based on 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Sonnery doesn't require you to bend your business to fit us. We can bend to fit your business. And that's a huge differentiator in the market for what a lot of KIM tools are able to do. In addition, we can come in and the next step is once we've taken care of unused identities and those admins, we've dropped it. We've dropped it. We now have a much lower risk index already just by doing a couple simple steps, right? So if we go in and we start taking a look at excessive permissions, look at least privilege, we can come in and be able to see a role in this case that has permissions that are assigned to it. This is the one that we saw in the slide deck where it has secret manager star. We know that's what it has today, but we've been watching this again, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever you want. We're taking a look at this and says, you know what, it's only using get secret value. We can give that to this user and be able to do that again through push button remediation, through that automation. You can do it through Terraform. I know a lot of companies out there are actually managing the permissions related to this. So you can actually do that root cause, be able to update your Terraform instance and be able to take care of these things in that manner. And being able to do that again with push button remediation from right here inside the platform. It's a great way to be able to do that. Step 3 gets us even further along the path. Not only, so we took the first step of removing the admins, we did the stale identities, we did the least privilege, our risk index goes way down. And so when we start digging in on this and looking at lateral movement, and we take a look at what these paths can do and indicate for us when we see these permutations of risk. So what we're seeing here, this didn't come from the logs. This came from us understanding across accounts. Each one of these boxes is an account in AWS. We see these relationships and how these things work together to be able to take care of these issues. And so this gives us the capability to be able to really eliminate that lateral movement and take care of those issues inside of the environment. And so this gives us a really great way of being able to take care of those issues inside. So if we take care of, again, an identity that's been sitting around for 30 days, it can completely eliminate these aspects of the permissions that can provide that those access, that access inside your cloud, completely cleaning up your identity profile in your cloud. And so when you take that into consideration with our cloud identity diagnostic, this gives you an easy way to be able to understand what's going on in your cloud, being able to see your org administrators, your used and unused permissions, where your stale identities are. All of that's available and easy to do inside Sonnery. And we can do that 48 hours, have that available for you. I know we're getting close to the end of our time. I want to pause here. Joseph, are there any other questions coming from the gallery that I can help answer today?
Yes, there are. So you answered the one about the order of admin. Someone asked, what PAM do we have? And I'm going to flip it around from what PAM do we use to how would a PAM and something like Sonnery work together?
Right. So look, where we typically see PAM is where you're going to have identities inside that will have the ability to have privileged access. We integrate with a lot of different tools, so we can actually inform Sonnery of those identities that are going to be able to have privilege escalation, and we can remove those from certain situations where we know that administrative privilege could potentially alert inside of Sonnery, and you want to take that out of the equation. It's super easy to do. But yeah, a lot of our customers have different IGAs, different PAM tools that enable us to connect and see those components. It's pretty easy to bring things in. We connect to a lot of those different tools to help inform Sonnery.
Awesome. And this is a good one. How can organizations balance the need for tight security measures like least privilege policies with the usability of real users?
Let me read that. How can organizations balance the need for tight security against least privilege policies with the usability and accessibility for legitimate users? Right. So, well, again, I think legitimate users is a subjectivity that a lot of Kim tooling out there that's just looking to determine what data, or what permissions are being used over some period of time. You're going to know that in certain situations what a legitimate user is. And that's why sometimes just making everything automated about least privilege can be a challenge to a lot of organizations. And look, the way that I laid this out, these are steps to be able to, as an organization, have an easy way to make a dent in this process. But being able to evaluate users' permissions, look, identities are kind of hard work. And having a platform that enables you to understand it in that depth gives you and your organization the power to have good conversations to determine who is legitimate and who is not, that a lot of other tooling just can't provide to you, because it's never going to understand inherited permissions and the full scope of, the highest level permissions to the lowest level ones and everything in between.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome, Nathan. That was the last question we had here. If anyone has a final question, feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll stop what I'm doing. We can do that. Nathan, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, thank you for joining us for today's session. We'll be sure to make sure to share the recording out. If you would like to follow us on LinkedIn, we certainly, Nathan, I know will drop his LinkedIn here in the chat, and would love to have some conversations with anyone and everyone as well.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.